Do you believe in luck? Are you who you are? Are you where you are because of your own efforts or because of luck? I'm Jay Leeming, and this is the Crane Bag Podcast. We talk about Lady Luck, but to the Romans, she was not simply a lady, but a goddess named Fortuna, Fortune, Dame Fortune. How great is her power? Can she help people to change their social class? Can she go against death and succeed? This story asks those questions. Thank you for joining me. Let us begin. Story come to us here in this moment, in this small corner of eternity in which we dwell. Come to us, water from a river we cannot see, water from a river flowing from heights of mountains far away. River coming out of darkness, going into darkness. Be with us here. Give us your sparkling water. May we listen well. May we learn from you. May we hear what you have to say. Once upon a time, there was a poor woman who was expecting a child. She and her husband lived in a broken-down house at the edge of a town in the middle of nowhere. And their roof was often leaking, and their clothes were ragged and torn, and often they did not have enough to eat. But nevertheless, they were expecting a child. And time went forward as it does. Days and weeks and months went by, and soon she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. He was beautiful, but they did notice on the side of his face there was a scarlet mark, a birthmark. So they rejoiced in their child, but they wondered also at this mark on the side of his head. And word of this mark spread through the town. And soon the medicine woman of the town came in the door. With her cowrie shells and her jewelry and her long scarves, she came into that little house. And they welcomed her, and she came and looked at the child. And she put her hand on his forehead, and she looked into his eyes, and she spoke with the man and the woman, the mother and father. And she closed her eyes and looked deep into that moment. For time is like dirt, and in that dirt you can see the seeds of what will happen and what will not happen. You can see which seeds will flourish and sprout and which ones will wither away. So she looked deep into that moment, and then she said, I hear music. I hear music of a grand party, a feast happening, yes. Not a feast here, not a feast in this town even, no. A feast and a grand celebration in the palace at the center of this kingdom, yes. This boy will be very lucky. I see a golden road ahead of him. For he will marry the princess of this kingdom. He will marry the king's daughter and live many years with her in happiness and contentment. That is what I see. And she opened her eyes, and then she got up and she left. Well, the mother and father, they wondered at this. Their little child, born here in this town at the edge of nowhere. It was somewhere to them. It was the center of their world. But they knew what the world thought, what the world said. They were in the margins of the large movements of this life. How could their little boy find his way to the palace? It seemed miraculous to them. Still, they wondered at this, and in their hearts they had hope. Well, news of this spread, and the town began to talk of it, whispering here and there in the corners of conversations. And it just so happened that the king of this kingdom, well, he had a habit of putting on rough clothes and wandering through his territories and talking to everyone he met to find out from them how things were going. So one day, not long after the birth of this baby, he came to a field at the edge of that town. And there was a fire made out of a few broken chairs there, and some ragged men were warming their hands over those flames. And the king fell in with them. He joined them and asked them what was going on in that town. And they told him. They told him about the old man there who'd learned to play the banjo, and about the beavers there who'd been near the river and been a nuisance to some of the farmers there. And they told him about the cat who'd had kittens recently, and this and that. And they told him about the boy who'd been born with the scarlet mark on the side of his face. And they told him what the medicine woman had said. Everyone says that she said that someday he's going to be very lucky. Someday he's going to marry the princess of this kingdom, the daughter of the king. Imagine that. A boy from our town marrying the daughter of the king, the princess herself. Yes, imagine that, said the king. Doesn't seem very likely. Yes, it doesn't seem very likely, one of the men said. But you know how this world goes. The medicine woman is not often wrong. We'll see, said the king in his heart. We'll see. And he said to himself, no little whippersnapper from this godforsaken town is going to marry my daughter. I will be sure of it. So not long after this, the king in his rags went to that little broken down house at the edge of town. And just outside the door, he put on his regal robes, and then he knocked on that door. And the mother and father opened it. Your Majesty, what are you doing here? Amazing. They were dumbstruck. Yes, he said. Well, I was in the neighborhood, and I heard some things about this baby boy you have. I've come to see your child, who I hear is quite miraculous. Sure, come in, come in. And they got a broken box, and he sat down on that, and they brought their child for him, just still a little baby. It had only been days since he'd been born. And the king looked at the baby boy. Ah, look at him. Marvelous. He does seem destined for great things, does he not? Well, that's what she said. Yeah, he's got the mark on the side of his face. That's what the medicine woman said. How are we to know? He'll probably live his life out here in our town. But, that's what she said. Interesting, said the king. Well, what would you say to me if I said, I would like to give you a large quantity of gold for your boy, your child here, your baby boy, because I would like to bring him up there in the palace. You would? In the palace? Yes. After hearing what he's destined for, I think he should be brought up there in that palace, yes, so he can be surrounded with the things of that place, the golden and beautiful things there, the magical things in my palace. I know he is your child and all, but I will give you a large quantity of gold. Well, what would you say? What would I say? What would any of us say? How would we answer a question like that? A wild question like that? A wild bargain like that? Well, we might think we would say no, but people make strange deals in this world. And children do end up in strange and sometimes difficult places that are nonetheless unexpected. So what they said was, sure, yes, of course. Wonderful, the king said. So he went outside to a secret stash he had in a sack there, and he brought in a large quantity of gold, and he gave it to the mother and father there. Here you go, he said. I'll take your child, and all shall be well. So he took the baby boy in his arms, and he left that house and went out into the night. And he walked by moonlight through that town after putting on his ragged clothes. He walked this way and that, past the field where he'd spoken to the men over the burning chair there. He went through a forest towards the river. And finding his way there, he came to the river there, almost glowing in the moonlight. And then he took a large wooden box he'd found in the town, and he put that baby into that wooden box. The baby was sleeping by this time. And then he went to a bridge, a ragged, broken-down bridge over that river, and he threw the box in the water. Splash! And the box did not sink, but it floated away. That's enough of you, said the king. That's enough of you. You'll never marry my daughter. The rapids of this river will suck you down. I have put out this candle before it can blaze up into a great fire. Goodbye, kiddo. And the king in his ragged clothes left that place and went off through the forest to wander his kingdom. And that box was taken by the river, taken in the arms of that river, and carried here and there, under dead trees, past old docks and piers, around old towns, here and there, through swamps it went, carried, and it did not sink. Miraculously, it was carried by that river for a good long time, until a little while later, There was a miller walking in the early morning outside along the river there near his mill. And he looked into that river, and he saw something approaching. A clumpy thing. What was it? Not a bush, not a tree, a dead tree, a raft. It was a box. So he took a long branch, and he fished that box out of the river and onto the shore. And he opened up that box, and there was the child, just awakening after a long, beautiful sleep. And the child began to cry, and he took the baby in his arms and rushed back to the mill. "My dear wife, look what I've found, a box in the river with a baby inside." "Amazing, my husband," she said. And she held the baby in her arms, for they had no children of their own, though they had long wished to have a child. And they asked here and there that day. They talked to everyone they knew. Had anyone heard about a baby thrown into a river, a baby floating adrift on the river? Well, nobody had heard of such a strange and crazy thing. So as time went on, they decided to bring that child up as their own. And they did so. And they cared for that baby boy with the scarlet mark on the side of his face. And he was given good food, and he grew up there with the miller and his wife. And really he lacked for nothing. He had friends, he had food to eat, he had all the luck he needed, he had sorrow and he had joy, and many troubles when he needed them, and blessings when he needed them as well. So he grew up as the years went by, and soon he was about 15 years old. And in that year there was a great thunderstorm that came through that town, showering down out of the clouds. It came in the afternoon, and it soaked the world through much of the night. And the king and his men just happened to be out and about in this storm, and they were caught by those rains, and they came to the mill where the miller and his wife lived, and they knocked on the door seeking shelter. Knock, knock, knock. And the door opened. "Your Majesty, what are you doing here?" "Well, we've been caught in a storm, my dears, and we are hoping to find some shelter. May we shelter here?" "Yeah, of course, of course. Come on in, come on in." So the miller and his wife let the king and his men into their mill there, and they sat them down by the fire, where they began wringing out their clothes. And the boy came, this young man who was now 15, with the scarlet mark on the side of his head. "Hello, Your Majesty, welcome to our house," he said. Yes, thank you, thank you. Oh, and the king looked at him, and he saw the scarlet mark on the side of his face. And in his heart, he knew exactly who that boy was. And he simmered in his head, in his heart. He simmered old sour pickles in his head. He was like, "This is that kid. This is that kid I hope to kill, and he's alive. How did this happen? I have to stop this." But then he smiled. "What a marvelous place you have here." Yes, we've done all right, all right. "And what sort of a life do you have, young man?" "Well, I've lived here with my parents, and life's pretty good, you know. The world looks beautiful to me. It's a beautiful day." "Well, that's what they all say, isn't it?" said the king. "Well, you do seem like a marvelous and miraculous boy, in fact. So I actually have an errand to run, and I'm wondering if you can run it for me. I need a message to be brought to my dear queen. Can you do that for me?" "Absolutely," said the boy. So it was agreed, and then they all went to sleep. But by candlelight, the king wrote a letter to the queen, and the letter was this: "My dear queen, when this boy arrives, please have him killed immediately. Love, the king." And he sealed this letter with the royal seal, and he put it in his coat pocket. And the next morning they all awoke, and they ate some food there in the mill, and the king took that sealed letter and gave it to the boy. "Here, this is an important message from my queen. Keep it close by your heart, and go to the palace and bring her this message, please, for I must go with my attendants here to another part of the kingdom for a while, and then I will be back at the palace." "Thank you for doing this for me." "No trouble," said the boy, "no trouble. I will start at once." "Excellent," said the king. "Do you know the way to the palace?" I'm sure I do. I'll see you later." And he said goodbye to his parents, and he went out the door and out into the world. And it was a beautiful day. A beautiful day, and the birds were singing in the trees. And the tracks of the raccoon were there in the muddy sands of the world. And the stars were there as well in the daylight sky, hiding behind the clouds in the bright daylight sky. All things seemed possible. It was spring. So the boy walked through the forest. He walked through the fields. And when he got lost, he would just ask someone and say, "Do you know the way to the palace?" And they would tell him, and off he would go. He went in this way, whistling to himself, carefree, knowing that he was fortune's darling, perhaps in his own heart, knowing perhaps that Lady Luck smiled upon him. But as often happens when traveling, soon night fell. Yes, night fell, and he had nowhere to stay. Nowhere to stay. He was in a dark forest. You know how it is. We've all been in dark forests, have we not? Yes, he was in the dark forest. There were trees around. Yes, the sun had gone down. Where was he going to spend the night? He hadn't quite thought about this. But then he looked through the darkness and he saw a light. And he walked towards that light, and that light was owned by a window, and that window was the home of a house, and the house was there, and he knocked on the door, and no one answered. Knock, 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 but no one answered. So he pushed on the door and it swung open. There was a long hallway there. He walked down the hallway. At the end there was a flickering light as from a fire in a fireplace. And he came to a large room, and by the fire there was an old woman in a chair, fast asleep. He nudged her on the shoulder. "Oh, hello, who are you?" I'm the luckiest boy alive. Who are you?" "Well, who cares who I am? What are you doing in this house? You got to get out of here." "What do you mean? I'm traveling. I need a place to spend the night." "Oh, don't stay here. No. This is a robber's den. There's thieves and murderers who live here. They're vicious men. If they see you, they will kill you right away. I say, son, you got to get out of here. Go sleep under a bush or something. That would be much better." "I don't think so," said the luckiest boy alive. "I'm pretty tired, you know. I see you've got a fire here. You've got a nice bench. I'll just curl up on the floor here. Everything will be fine." "I don't think you should do that," she said. "They are mean and angry and evil people who live in this house. They will kill you as soon as they find you." "I don't think so. I'll be fine. Good night." And he went off and he lay down on a bench, and soon he was snoring away. The old woman looked at him. She sighed, and then she too fell asleep in the chair. Well, some time later, the robbers and thieves came home. Fresh from murdering and stealing things from this world, they came stomping in the door. "What's going on in here?" They went to the fireplace room there. The boy was there, fast asleep, not awoken by their loud stomping. "Okay, mother, what's going on here?" "Oh, dear sons, I'm sorry, there's a boy here. We can see that. What's he doing here?" He's traveling, I guess. He said I was delivering a message to the king, I think. I told him not to stay here, but this is horrible. Let's kill this kid. No, let's sell him as a slave," another said. No. His bones, if they roast his bones over there, they make dice out of bones in the town a few ways off. They can use his bones for that. "I don't think so. No, let's kill him right now. I don't want to have him here. Let's kill him right now." And they went to him and they pulled out their knives and were about to slit his throat right there so they could sell his body in some evil and fiendish way. But then they thought for a moment and said, "Wait a minute. You said there's a message here to the king?" "Yeah, that's the story. There's a message. I think it's in his coat pocket there." Well, they reached in. A slithery hand went into his coat pocket, pulled out the letter there for the queen, and they looked and they read that letter. "My dear queen, please have this boy killed as soon as he arrives at the palace. Love, the king." "Oh, that's so sad," the robbers said. "That's so sad." They began to weep. "Oh, God, the poor child. He doesn't even know. He doesn't even know." They sat there blubbering. "This king, oh, God, this king is horrible. I never liked that king. This poor boy is going to be killed as soon as he gets there. He's so innocent. Oh, we have to do something." So they called on Billy the forger, one of their number there. And they said, "Billy, make a different note, will you?" Sure, I'll make a different note." So, an expert forger that he was, he wrote a message that was entirely different. This message, in fact, said, "My dear queen, as soon as this boy arrives, please marry him off to our darling daughter. Love, the king." So he wrote that note. That'll suit that king. We don't like that king anyway. Oh, he doesn't want this, all right. And they sealed it up expertly, fiendish people that they were, and they put that letter there in the coat pocket of the boy. And then they all went to sleep, tired after a day of thieving, robbing, stealing, and doing bad things, spitting on cats and stuff like that. Well, in the morning, the luckiest boy alive, he got up before everyone else. The old woman was asleep. The thieves were asleep. He got up. He saw the fire was just smoldering there in the hearth. And quietly he walked out of that house and into the forest. It was a beautiful day. The birds were singing their songs that unlock the doors at the end of corridors known only to the moon. The earthworms, well, they were dreaming their way through the earth, and their dreams make the earth fertile so the seeds can blossom and sprout. And the clouds were high in the sky like the thoughts of a god who's been dead for 1,000 years, though gods can never die. So he went through the forest, not knowing exactly where he was going, but just following his nose. And before long, he came to the palace. He came to the palace. He went up to the gate there, and there were the guards, and he said, "Hello, I bring a message from the king for the queen." "Oh, you do, huh? Well, all right. Come in, come in." So they let him in. He went through the hallways. He went to the throne room, taken there by the guards. And there was the queen, resplendent in a turquoise gown, sparkling like a jewel found in a mountain at the heart of this world. Smiling down, she looked at him. "Ah, yes, dear boy, what do you bring me today?" "I bring a message from your husband, the king." "Oh, all right, then. Hand it over." So he handed the message over to the queen. She opened it and read it. She looked at him. She read the message again. She looked at him. All right, then. Sunlight came into her face. "All right, then, boy. Let's begin at once." Begin at once? "Yes, let's begin at once. I'll make the arrangements." "All right, let there be a wedding." And she clapped her hands, and servants began running all over the place, and the banquet was started, and the cooks down in the kitchen started doing this and baking that, and they started sweeping the castle this way and that, and before long there was a wedding. Yes, and there was the princess. The luckiest boy looked at her. She looked pretty nice. He barely knew her, but hey, why not? That's the way things go. Bing, bang, boom. So they had a wedding. You know, the king and the queen, they've got so many resources. It doesn't take much to have a big party. So bang, they had a big party just like that. The two of them were married, and there was a feast afterwards and dancing, and the musicians played cornerless songs in all the corners of the castle and sometimes in the middle of the rooms as well. Well, time went on. And the king and his men there, who'd been caught in the rainstorm, well, after a time, for they'd gone a roundabout way, for he had other business to attend to, taxes to see about here, towns to visit, bridges to ceremoniously open, hands of mayors to shake, things like that. Finally, they did head back to the palace some time after the luckiest boy alive had reached that place. And they came towards the palace, and the king he looked, and he saw the palace looked a little strange. Well, I mean, the guards looked strange. It looked like they were asleep. It was mid-morning, but they were asleep, and one of them had a pink hat on his head. He was snoozing, and there was a wine glass there in the grass, knocked over, and a bottle of wine as well, empty now. "What's going on here?" thought the king. And he went through the gate of his palace, went through the front door and down the hallway. And well, there was confetti in some of the rooms. There were servants sleeping there. Others were hastily trying to clean things up. There was an accordion player asleep under a table. There was another wine bottle in a corner. Crusts of cake were in a corner there. It looked like a huge bash had happened. A gigantic feast had happened in this palace. He wandered around looking, what's going on? There's been a grand celebration here. And finally he went to the garden of that palace, and there he saw his daughter, the princess, and the boy with the mark on the side of his face, laughing and clutching a wine bottle between them and telling stories and singing songs there and telling jokes in each other's arms there in the garden. "What's this?" said the king. "What's going on?" Oh, father," the princess said. "Father, welcome home. Welcome home. What a fine young man you've found for me. He's splendid. Just a wonderful guy. We've had a grand celebration. Sorry you couldn't be here." "You've had a celebration, have you?" "Just a celebration?" "Well, we were married, of course, before that. The magic words were said. We tied the knot, and so we are husband and wife, yes, and we're just enjoying the new day, for it is a new day for us. Father, a beautiful, rousing, fantastic day. Good morning. Welcome home." "I see," said the king. "I see." And he looked at the young man there with the mark on the side of his face, and he said, "Well, youngster, You're my son-in-law, I see." "Yes, yes, your majesty, yes, yes. I think we've met before." "Yes, yes, we've met before. But you should know this thing isn't quite done, you know. It's not quite over. This deal, this arrangement, this situation is not quite come to its finish. Because to really marry my daughter, well, you've got to do a thing or two for me." Oh, a thing or two, huh? Yeah, a thing or two. Well, what do I have to do, Your Majesty? What do I have to do? Well, what you have to do is this. Bring me 3 golden hairs from the King of Death in the Underworld. Oh, is that all? Yes, that's all. So go do that, come back here, and, well, then everything will be fine. Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I'll start at once. You better start at once. And he grumbled and went off to yell at the accordion players and get them to straighten up and go tune their accordions, which cannot be tuned, but that's what he said. So the luckiest boy alive straightened himself up. He dusted himself off. He kissed the princess goodbye. And then he said goodbye to the queen, to the king. I will go to find where the king of the underworld lives, and I will bring back 3 golden hairs from his head. I will see you soon. Good luck, sonny boy, said the king. Good luck, sonny boy. So, this boy with a mark on the side of his face, the luckiest boy alive, he wandered across the world, went through forests, through fields, went into large cities and small villages. And everywhere he went, he asked people how to get to the underworld, how to find the King of Death. Well, no one really knew. But he heard some very strange songs in one town that seemed to show him the way. And he heard some very interesting riddles in another town from an old man. And these also seemed to guide him in some secret way known only to the bones in his body, known only to his shadow. So he wandered this way and that, not sure where he was going, but sure he was going the right way. And finally, one day, he came to a town. And this town had a wall around it, and in this wall there was a watchtower, and in that watchtower there was a guard. And the guard said, "Who are you and what do you know?" And the boy said, "I'm the luckiest boy alive, and I know quite a few things." "Oh, you do, huh? Oh, you do, huh? Well, tell me this. We've got a tree in this town. Yes, a beautiful tree that used to have golden apples on it that would blossom and were so ripe and sweet. But now this tree, well, there's no apples at all. Now there's hardly a leaf on this tree. It's been in this town for generations. We don't know what's going on. Can you tell me how to cure this tree so we may have golden apples again?" "Well, I don't know that," said the boy, "but I'm on my way to talk to the King of Death in the Underworld, and he knows a lot of things. He reads the book of this world backwards and forwards. He knows the underside of all things, so I think he'll have an answer, and on my way back I will tell you the answer." "All right, well, good luck, kid." And off he went, leaving that town. And he wandered over some mountains, over some hills, through some valleys, this way, that way, singing a song. Singing a song, singing a song, he went, the most annoying, beautiful, babyish, childish, old man song you've ever heard. There were wrinkles in this song, there were crinkles of waterfalls that run at the end of the world. Well, it was a beautiful song. And guided by this song and by his own footsteps and perhaps by the actions of unseen powers, soon he came to another town. And this town had a wall around it as well, and in this wall there was a watchtower, and in this watchtower there was a guard. And the guard said, "Who are you and what do you know?" And he said, "Well, I'm the luckiest boy alive, and I know quite a few things." "Oh, you do, huh? Oh, you do. Well, tell me this. We've got a fountain in this town, a beautiful fountain in the center of the town. And for years it gave us the most clear, sparkling, healing, and nourishing water. But now it's gone completely dry. Not a drop of beautiful water is in this fountain. So can you tell me, what's the problem here? How do we solve this? How do we bring the healing waters back to this town?" "Well, I don't know that," said the boy, "but I'm on my way to see the King of Death. He knows a lot of things. He knows the insides and the outsides of every pipe and plumbing implement in this world. He's kind of a philosopher, I hear, so I'm going to ask him some questions, and I'll ask him your question, and I'll tell you the answer when I come back." "Oh, you will then. All right. Good luck, kid." And he turned, and off he went. Well, he left that city, and soon he came to a vast mountain range, a salty ash-colored mountain range. And he had a feeling that he had to go through these mountains, so he followed this feeling as if it were a trail. You know how the feelings you have can be trails. You can follow them. Sometimes you come to a crossroads. There's 3 feelings at once going in different directions. What do you do when the feelings are stacked up like that? Well, he followed his feelings. He went by his gut and his instincts. He went following his own shadow, and he went through those mountains. And soon he entered a ruddy place with a cinnamon sky above and red scarlet mountains. And soon he went descending, and the sky seemed to be like a twilight sky at all times, cinnamon colored. And soon he went down towards a river, a slow, quiet, drizzly sort of river. But nonetheless, it was very wide. And he saw there was no bridge across this river. But down there, on the shore of this river, there was a boat. And beside this boat, there was a boatman. And he went to this boatman. And the boatman greeted him and said, "Ah, hello, sir. I'll bet you want to get across this river." "Yes, I do," said the boy. "May I be allowed across?" Of course, of course. Get in the ferry. I'm the ferryman. Let us go." So the luckiest boy alive got into the boat, and the ferryman had a pole, and he pushed off from the side of the river, and the boat began to go across the waters. And as the boat drifted, the ferryman said to the boy, "Well, what are you doing here? Not many people come this way, so I wonder what you're doing here. In fact, I wonder who you are and what it is you know." "Well," said the boy, "I'm a lucky kind of a boy, and I'm on my way to talk to the King of Death. Because I hear he knows all kinds of things, and I wish to hear what he knows." "Oh, you are? Not many people have come here doing that. But when you get there, I have a question, actually, I'd like you to ask him. And the question is this. Why do I have to pole this ferry all the time? I've been doing this forever, as far as I can tell. It's like time is circular. Every day becomes the same day. I've been doing this forever. I can't even remember where I'm from or where I'm going. I just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth across this river all the time. I would very much like to do something else. I have it in my heart to do great things, maybe to become a painter or even a great dancer or something like that. But I'm stuck in this line of work. I'd like a change of career, actually. So if you can talk to the King of Death, just put in a good word and ask this question for me and see how I can get out of this job of poling this ferry. Would you, son?" "Sure," said the luckiest boy alive. I'd be happy to do that." "Great, thanks," said the ferryman. And after a while, they came to the other side of that river, and the ferry arrived on the sand there, and the boy got out. And he thanked the man and began to walk. And it was a dry and desolate place, red and orange stones all around him, a baked landscape. It had been hot, it was hot, it seemed, a simmering landscape. But he walked into the mountains there, the rust-red mountains, and soon he found a green iron door in the ground. So he lifted this door, opened it up, boom, steam and strange smoke came out of it, but he saw there were iron stairs going down. So, of course, he went down. That's the way you go. That's the way you get. Don't we all know that? With the soles of our feet, he went down. So he went down into the darkness. And there was a torch burning there. He took it in his hands. He walked down a long metal hallway, this way and that. Another door, clanking here and there, a left turn, a right turn, another set of stairs, a spiraling stair down, a strange pipe in the wall, faucets dripping, steam coming here, beaded on the walls. He began to perspire. Down and down he went, stairs, this way, that way, cables, strange fences and gates. Finally he came to a long hallway, a metal hallway, and he went clanging down this hallway, and he saw a light at the end. And he got there and he saw it was a room. In fact, it was a kitchen. And he stumbled out wide-eyed into this kitchen, and there was an old woman there. And she said, "Who are you? Hey, you're a human. What are you doing here?" "I'm the luckiest boy alive," he said, "and I've come here to get 3 golden hairs from the King of Death." "Oh, the King of Death? 3 golden hairs? What kind of a crazy project is that?" "Well, he's not here right now, and you're lucky, because if he was, he would devour you and turn you magnetically into a piece of ash floating on the other side of the moon or something like that. He's a harsh, burning sort of a fellow. I don't think you want to tangle with him." Well, I have these questions, said the boy. These 3 questions I've brought, and I'm hoping he can enlighten me. 3 questions? And what are your questions? Well, he told the old woman all of his questions about the tree that once had apples but now had none, about the fountain that no longer flowed, and about the ferryman who wished to leave his line of work and do something else. Oh, boy, those are good questions, she said. Well, I'm the mother of the King of Death, and he'll be home soon, I know that. And, well, I can find a way to do this. Here, kid, come closer. And he came a little closer, and she took him and she patted him on the head. And as she did so, he began to get smaller. He began to shrink, and his skin became very hard and crackly, sort of, and he got smaller and smaller, and soon he found he had extra arms and legs, and he became an ant. And she held him in her hands, and she put him into the pocket of her dress. You stay there and keep quiet. I will ask your questions of my son when he comes home, and if you can listen to his answers, well, then you will get what you came for. Thank you, said the boy. Don't mention it, she said. And she began to sweep with a broom here and there. There was soup bubbling on the stove. And after a while, clang, 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 came the King of Death. Yes, he came clanging in the door. Hello, Mom. Ah, son, come in. You've had a busy day down there, I can see. Oh, yeah, the underworld was tough today. Lots of shadows to wrestle with, tangles, the puzzles of the eclipses and the darkness behind the words that presidents speak. It all got tangled up. I had to make it even more tangled. It was a rough day down there. What's for dinner, Mom? Well, I got some soup here. All right, let's have some soup. So she gave him some soup, and the King of Death sat down, and he slurped up that soup. Good soup, Mom, good soup. Yeah, I try to make it good for you. I put some hog's tails in there. Thanks, Mom, thanks. Well, after he was done eating, she said, now let me brush your golden hair. Because the King of Death, well, smoky and ash-colored as he was, dark as he was, like the rear side of the moon, nonetheless, he had golden hair that was shimmering down, beautiful like the sun. So she sat in a chair, and he sat beside her, and she began to brush his hair. And as she brushed his shimmering hair, slowly, with a movement like waves on a beach, after a while, he fell asleep. And when he fell asleep, she reached into his hair, grabbed one of those hairs, and plucked it out. Boonk! Ow! Ow! He woke up right away. Mother, what are you doing? Sorry, I was dreaming. Dreaming? What were you dreaming about? Well, I had this dream, a strange dream about a town with a tree, an apple tree with golden apples. But there's no more golden apples anymore, and they're wondering what they should do. Oh, those crazy people in your dream, they're just dumb. What they gotta do is this. There's a rat there who's chewing on the roots of this tree. They just have to kill the rat, and the tree will be fruitful once again. They'll have all the golden apples they want. That's the answer to your dream, Mother. Now, brush my hair, will you? Oh, all right, son, I will. So she took the brush, and she began to brush his hair once again. Gently and slowly, like a rhythm, a lullaby rhythm, she brushed his golden, shimmering hair, and soon enough he fell asleep again. And when he was sound asleep, she reached into his head of hair, took hold of one of those hairs, and plucked it out. Bang! Ow! He said. Mom, what are you doing? Sorry, she said. I had another dream. On you and your crazy dreams. What was your dream this time? Well, I dreamed about another town, and this one had a fountain that used to have sparkling water, but now it's dry as a bone, and they're wondering what they should do. Oh, that's easy, those dumb idiots. Well, there's a frog, a magical frog there that's just kind of living in this fountain under a rock, and they just got to find that frog, kill the frog, and then, well, the spell will be broken and the water will return to the fountain. That's the answer, Mother. Now, let me sleep a little more. All right, son, you rest easy. And she took the hairbrush, and she began to brush his hair once again. And as she brushed his shimmering golden hair, soon he fell asleep. And when he was sound asleep, she reached onto his head of hair. She took hold of a hair, and she plucked it out. Bang! Ow! Oh, Mom, what's you and your dumb dreams? What's going on this time? Sorry, son, I just have these dreams. They come and visit me. Well, I dreamed about a ferryman who goes back and forth all the time on a river, and is kind of sick of it, actually, and is seeking another line of work. And he's wondering how he can get out of this situation of being the ferryman all the time. That's easy. These dumb people in your dreams. Well, Mother, it's like this. He's just got to take the pole he uses to drive that ferry across the river, and he's got to hand that to the next person who comes along, and they will hold on to it, and as soon as they touch that pole, they will be glued to that job, and he will be able to leave and really do whatever his heart desires. Whereas the person who's holding that pole, well, they'll have to be there forever, going back and forth on that river. That's the answer, Mom. Now, I'm tired of you brushing my hair. I'm going to go get some real rest, okay? All right, son. Sleep well. And he went clanking and clanging off through the hallways back to his bedroom there. And when he was sound asleep, the mother of the King of Death took the little ant out of her pocket, the ant that was the luckiest boy alive. And she blew on him with her breath and patted him on the head, and soon he began to get larger and larger still, and soon he was standing there beside her in the kitchen of the Underworld. And she said, "Did you hear everything my son said?" "Yes," he said, "yes, thank you, I heard all the answers." "And here," she said, "are 3 golden hairs from the head of the King of Death. Now run along, for if he wakes up, if he even smells you here, well, it'll be a bad scene, and you won't escape alive. Go away, see you later." "Thank you," he said, "thank you." And he turned and he hurried away down the hallway holding the 3 golden hairs. Then he put them in his pocket and he went clanking down through the hallways there. And then he began to climb up the stairs, this way and that way, spiraling stairs, strange doors, weird fences and bridges underground, steam rising pipes. He went here, there, higher and higher, higher and higher. Finally he came to that green iron door. He creaked it open, wham! And he stepped out into the ruddy, cinnamon-colored world of that mountain range there. And he walked this way and that, knowing his way forward by his own thoughts and his memories. He came back to that river, and there was the ferryman snoozing beside his ferry. "Ferryman, ferryman, oh, you boy, you've come back. Did you get some answers to your questions?" "Yes, I did," said the boy. "How about my question? Did you get an answer to my question?" "I did, but let me tell you once we get across, okay?" All right. So he got in the ferry. And so the ferryman began to pole his ferry across that water, and they went drifting across that water underneath the cinnamon sky. And soon they came to the other side, and the boy stepped out onto the sand. And the ferryman said, "Now, my boy, tell me the answer to my question." "Well, I spoke with the King of Death, and he said this. He said, all you have to do is hand that pole to the next person who comes along. Give them that pole, and as soon as they touch that pole, they will be glued to this job, this career, and this path, and they will have to ferry this raft forever across the river, and you can go on and do whatever your heart desires. That's the answer." "It's that easy," said the ferryman. "Yes, it's that easy," said the boy. "That's wonderful. Thank you. You know, I want to thank you. So you should know that behind that large boulder over there, there's a vein of gold there. Yes, a seam of gold rocks there. So just go over there and gather up some of those golden rocks and bring them home to your folks, because it's worth a lot of money there in the world of humans, so I've heard." "Thank you," said the boy. And he said goodbye to the ferryman. He went behind that boulder, and he filled up his pockets, his bags, everything he had with him, with big chunks of gold that were there, just crackling out of the rocks there. And then, leaving that place, he began to walk through the world. And he left that cinnamon-red mountain range behind him. And he walked through fields and forests until, finally, he came to a town. "Who are you and what do you know?" said the watchman. "Wait a minute. I know who you are. You're that lucky boy. Yes, you've come back. What have you found out? What have you seen? What have you heard by talking to the King of Death?" "Well," said the luckiest boy alive, "I did ask him your question about the fountain, this fountain which is dry as a bone. He said, in fact, there's a magical frog living in the fountain. All you have to do is kill that frog, and then the waters will return. The sparkling, healing waters will return to your town, and all shall be well." "Hey, thank you," said the watchman. "Thank you. This is a great thing you've done for us." "Well, it's the least I could do." "All right, be lucky. See you later." And the boy went and left that town. And he traveled beneath the day like a great bridge through this eternity that we live in. And soon he came to another town. And this town had a watchtower, and in that watchtower was the same guard. And the guard saw him and said, "Who are you and what do you know?" "Wait a minute, you're that kid. You're that boy I saw before. Well then, you've made a long journey. You went and came back. Tell me, do you know an answer? Do you have an answer to our problem here?" "Why, yes, I do," said the boy. "You've got a tree with no golden apples, but it's very simple. There's a rat chewing on the roots of this tree. If you kill that rat, well, the tree will flourish, the golden apples will return, and the leaves as well. And you shall have sweet, nourishing, magical apples for as long as you care to have them." "Thank you," said the guard. "That's amazing." "Yes, isn't it?" said the boy. "Ta-ta, see you later." And he turned and left that town. So he went this way and that, taking left turns and right turns, and sometimes going straight ahead. So he went, following his shadow, following the feelings in his feet and in his ankles. So he went this way and that, until he returned to the palace. The palace at the center of this story, perhaps. And he came, and there were the guards. And this time they were not wearing party hats. They were not asleep. There was not a wine bottle in the grass. But he said, "Hello, sirs. I'm the luckiest boy alive. I've come back." "Oh, all right. You are, have you? All right, then. The king's inside. Let's go." They took him down the hallway to the throne room. And there was the king, and there was the queen. And the luckiest boy alive knelt down before the king, and from the pocket of his coat he pulled the 3 golden hairs. And on one knee he bent down, he offered them to the king. "Sire, I have brought you these 3 golden hairs. These are from the king of death in the underworld. I have brought them for you in fulfillment of the promise that I made to do this task." The king was amazed. "Well, these are the hairs of the king of the underworld, of the king of death. Amazing. These are really them. Well, clearly you have more inner resources than I had bargained on." "Well, thank you," said the boy. "And what's more, I have some gold for you." "Gold?" he said. Yes, there was a bunch of gold there beside a river. And he opened his pockets and his bag, and he took out all these chunks of solid gold, and he put them there before the king. "These are for you," he said. "These are amazing. These are worth millions. Where did you get these? Tell me exactly." "Well, if you go down towards the underworld, there's a river there at the border of the underworld, and there's a ferryman who takes people across that river. Just speak with him, and he will tell you where to find this gold, and he knows many other things besides." "That's wonderful," said the king. I think I might go there myself." "Well, you might want to do that," said the boy. "But as for right now," said the king, "let us have a wedding." And he clapped his hands, and the servants came, and they put a wedding together right away. Yes, a marvelous and beautiful wedding. And the servants made this, and they made that, and there was cakes, and there was ale and beer in 3,500 flavors. And there was a magician with a blind in one eye, and there was an ornithologist with a purple hat. And the luckiest boy alive. And the princess, they were married, as the medicine woman had foretold. And after that marriage there was a great feast. And it is said that many people came to that feast. It is said that the boy's own parents found their way there. It is said that the miller and his wife found their way there as well. And it is said that the medicine woman herself came, who had looked into the dirt of time and seen the seeds that flourish and those that do not. But before that feast was over, though it went for many days, before that feast was over, the king, well, he wasn't anywhere to be found. Because as soon as the wedding was over, he had gone through the world to the underworld. And he had gone to that river. And he had come to that ferryman and said, "Hey, ferryman, where's this gold I hear about?" "Oh, the gold," he said. "Well, just get on my ferry and I'll tell you where the gold is." And the king got on the ferry, and the ferryman said, "Well, the gold is just ahead behind some rocks there. Actually, I got a map where it is. I'll go get it." And by this time, the ferry went to the side of the river there, and it landed. And the ferryman said, "I'm going to go get this map. Here, can you hold this pole?" And the king took hold of that pole. So some of us go back and forth across the river of the underworld. Some of us are woven into the tapestry of creation, going left and right, shuttled back and forth to become a color in that great tapestry. And some of us are kings, and some of us are beggars, And some of us are poor boys, and some of us are rich boys, and rich girls, and poor girls, and we all dance in this great wide world. And the bones of certain animals are turned into dice, and they are marked with numbers, and they are thrown onto tables. And men look at these numbers, and women look at these numbers, and they play games. And some of them win, and some of them lose. And some of the winners and some of the losers, well, whoever they are, after that game is over, they go outside, and some of them look up at the stars. All right, then. Thank you for listening to this story. Let us take it as a flowing river. Let us take it as a landscape. Let us enter that place. Let us go in. Let us see the trees and the birds in this story. Where do you go? Do you sit there in the house of the thieves and the murderers, by the old woman there by the fire? Are you there when the luckiest boy alive bursts in looking for a place to spend the night? Or perhaps you're down there in the underworld, under that cinnamon-colored sky beside that river. Perhaps you're in that clanky underworld, the kitchen there, where the mother of the king of death is making soup. Perhaps you're in the palace garden there, after the party, with a hat on your head, listening to the songs of the birds, with a song in you that comes from the buzz of the beautiful wine they serve. Each time we enter a story, we may find ourselves at a different place in the story. It speaks to us and we speak to it. We change and the story changes. Our perception of it changes. So where do you go is the question. Where do you find yourself? I like the king there in rags, listening to the stories told by the people of the town, or perhaps the outcasts of the town. For we're not in the town square, we're at the edge of town, gathered around a fire. I like the stories he hears there. I like to see the sparks go up into the sky, and to hear these scraps of rumor of life in the town, the way life is turned into story. I like also, horrible though it is, I like the baby in the box floating on the river, the way the river takes it. This story is like a river. It takes a few elements of plot and carries them way, way downstream. The story seems to me to ask a question. What is the power of luck in the world? What can it stand up to? How powerful is it? The first half, we see basically luck take a boy of low social class and raise him up to the heights of this story world, to the kingdom where the king and queen are, and where there is gold and where there is feasting. So luck can do that. And then it's like a theorem that needs to be proved. How about death? Okay, you can rule the human world, luck, but can you go up against death itself? And so that question is tested as well. Luck was, well, we say Lady Luck sometimes. The Romans called her Fortuna, and she was a goddess. And there was a wheel, and you ride on that wheel, and sometimes you're at the top, and sometimes you're at the bottom. And sometimes you're on the side somewhere. Keeping that in mind makes looking at the world a different experience. Celebrities, famous people, rich people, they go up, they go down. They go up, they go down. Of course you're going to win the Grammy. Of course you're going to get tons of money. And then of course you're going to be in whatever it is, drug rehab. You're going to be in the domains of bad albums and bad music, perhaps. Perhaps you're going to be a politician at the top of your game, and then perhaps you will be at the bottom. And in our own lives, it is no different. I'm talking about the heights there, but also in our own lives. We know moments of great achievement and victory and zenith, top of the roller coaster, and then moments of the bottom, the nadir, the zero zone, the cave in the underworld. Perhaps that's just a natural flowing and turning of the wheel of life. As for me, I'm a white male who was raised in upstate New York, and I was basically raised to believe that luck does not exist. There is no luck. There is only your own ability to work or not. If you're willing to do the work, everything will work out for you. That's the message I was told, not in so many words, but by the stories around me. It was assumed by others around me. Things are basically all right. It's part of the American myth, right? Any of us can become president. It's part of the American myth. You can be anything you want to be. It's up to you. That's the story I was told, which neglects a lot, which neglects the social factors, these forces that govern our lives that are unseen sometimes, unseen by us, that are dangerous and don't have our best interests at heart. Forces like racism, like financial demands, like corporations, governments, and of course the dark side of any of us, any one of us listening to this, or those in power as well. So that story that your life is in your hands and it's up to you is not the whole truth, I would say. There was a poll some time ago done by the New York Times, and it showed that the people in the U.S. who are most likely to believe that jumping social class is possible are the ones for whom that is least likely to happen. Now, wrap your head around that again there. The ones in this country who are the most downtrodden and have the least chance of dying, let us say, with more money than their parents had, the ones who are least likely to move up the social ladder and the financial ladder, are the ones who most believe that it is possible. So that raises the question, if that story is not part of the chains which bind us, the shackles we have around us. In my experience, the more that the story, the situation around you works for you, the more the system works for you, the less likely you are to believe in luck. Gambling, lottery tickets, that's for the lower classes. No judgment is intended here, definitely not. If anything, I'm judging the upper classes, right, who deny the existence of these other factors. But in my experience, that's the way it is. The more your life is governed by forces you cannot control, whether they are insurance companies or corporations that move overseas and leave you without a job, the more you're governed by strange forces, whoever they are, surgeons, bankers, developers, the more you tend to believe in luck, in another capacity to change events in this world. So in that sense, not to believe in luck is a sign of privilege. It's a sign that basically the system works for you, and you are less subject to those malicious, unseen, and incomprehensible forces which dominate the lives of many in this world. But of course there is death, of course there is sickness, of course there is accident. And when these things happen, well, then perhaps we can speak of luck. And in this country, when thinking about luck, about chance, I think inevitably of Coyote. If I can say his name, it's not always safe to say his name. The trickster one, the changing man, the accident, the exception to every rule. Yes, the crack in the glass. Him, that one, Coyote, who you see, who is an animal and is more than an animal and is a shapeshifter. I think of him. There's a fantastic Tsutsuil Mayan story told to me and to others once by Martin Prechtel, Prechdtel. And in this story, the hero must go down to the underworld, the realm of death, to bargain for the heart of the woman he loves, who's been killed, and he needs her heart to reconstitute her body so she can live in the upper world. He goes down to the realm of death, and before he goes, Coyote gives him some dice, the knuckle bones of an animal. He gives him these to gamble with death. And he says, if you cannot strike a deal with death, then offer to gamble, because death loves to gamble. The only thing that death obeys is chance. The only thing which can rule death is chance. That's what that story says. And so perhaps in our own lives, that is our experience. Chance. Do you get in the car accident or not? Do you get Alzheimer's or not? We try to make it rational. We look at all the sources of cancer, of getting killed in this way or that, in a plane, in a car, on the street, blah, blah, blah. We want to figure it out. But can we figure it out? Well, it's healthy to think we can. And there's probably good things to be said for doing that. We probably have to do that. But perhaps also luck is involved. So this story seems to wrestle with these questions to me. To ask the question of what is the power of luck, this goddess? What is her power in the world? What can she do? What is she capable of? And the story says that the desires of the king mean nothing when it comes to Lady Fortune, the goddess of luck. For she can make this lowly boy with a mark on the side of his head, she can make him a prince, the wife of the husband of the princess there in the kingdom. And then a trip to the underworld, dealing with the king of death. Can this lucky boy who has no training, has none of the necessary things you would think to make this journey, can he succeed in that and get hairs from the head of the king of death? Well, again, with luck on his side, that is entirely possible. So Lady Luck, it seems, can do anything. That's what this story seems to say. And that is mostly an encouraging thought. If you are lowly, if you are seeking to better your position in life, to succeed in any way, well, Lady Luck can make that possible. Now, of course, she can also drag you down if you're too high. If you are on the high side of things, she can drag you down as well. But this story is more about the movement the other way, the movement up. I was in Reno once, and I wanted to experience gambling in my early 20s. So I went into the casino, and I spent $10 on roulette. And I had a system. If it came up black 2 times, I would bet on the red. If it came up red 2 times, I would go on the black. Maybe it was 3 times. I had a system. I was going to use a system to figure this out. And I stuck with that system, and in a couple hours, I had $300. And in my head, I was buying a new guitar for myself. This is quite a while ago. And then, of course, inevitably, the wheel kept spinning, of course. Things started to happen. I got a free drink from the people in the casino. They changed the dealer, or the person running the roulette wheel, and I could see them pointing me out, or that's what I imagined anyway. I saw businessmen around me throw down like $500 and see it disappear in an instant. Oh yeah, all right, on to the next. I saw businessmen with their girlfriends there in tow, carrying their drinks for them and putting the money down. You know perhaps what casinos are like. And time went on, and the wheel spun, and after a while, I was down to $15, and so I walked out. I remember at the height of it, when I had like $300, I took a break to go off to the bathroom, and I came back kind of shivering with excitement that my $10 had become $300. And the guy next to me said, it would be a sin to stop now, which of course is just the thing. If you stop, then maybe you'll succeed, but we don't stop. We have a hard time stopping. We want to flow forward. There's no real reason why this shouldn't work. It's worked so far, right? We're used to things working. You know, if you turn on the light one day, you expect it to turn on the next day. If the cars stop at the stop sign one day, you expect them to stop the next day. The universe follows certain rules and has certain patterns. And here is this pattern. I'm doing this thing on the roulette wheel and I'm winning, so of course I'm going to keep winning. Well, but luck doesn't work that way. Luck has its own pattern. Chance has its own pattern. And of course, I lost. I remember black came up like 16 times in a row, and I kept going on red, like, oh, come on, it's got to be red. But it doesn't have to be red. There's no balance here. Anything can happen at any time. And my system was a farce. I realized that about halfway through, but I figured I better just keep going just to be consistent. Maybe my consistency would help make this work out. But chance is not exactly consistent, I suppose. So that's one education in luck that I had. Another one was buying a house. And the buying of my house with my wife was intensely complicated for many reasons that I don't need to go into here. The house was going to be foreclosed. The previous owner owed Chase Manhattan Bank thousands of dollars. It was a large mess. But I'll just say I had never felt so subject to powers greater than myself that I could not control ever before. So for a while, it seemed like luck was important. Well, it does now. I mean, in the end, it came down to hours. We had to fax certain forms to somebody just on this day by noon, and we got it in by 11, and the sale went through, to make a long story short. But as I say, I feel privileged in saying that. Other folks have that experience much younger. Their parents have that much younger, where you are subject to forces you cannot control and who seem to randomly come out of nowhere and change your life. You thought you were going to this school, well, you're going to this one. You thought you were getting into this college, well, you're not. You're getting into this one. You thought you had this job, well, you don't actually. We're moving it, and we're putting an apartment building next door to your house, and it's 25 stories tall, and your garden is under shadow now. Well, you can think of many examples, perhaps. So I guess what I'm coming to, the conclusion I'm coming to, is that luck in many ways is un-American, because we think that our lives are in our own hands. That's the story we like to tell. We can do whatever we want. And luck, doesn't matter. That's the old world, the old superstitious world of evil eyes and cards and dice on tables. No, here in rational America, we can do what we want. Everyone has opportunity, etc., etc. But I think there is a truth in luck. And there is a truth in the unseen, random, dangerous, merciless beauty of this world. You're in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the wrong time. You find the key in the street. You lose your hat, and somebody else picks it up. You burn the rice in the pan, and so stay at home to clean it up, and you're not outside when the shooting happens. I don't mean to be dark, but that is the world we live in the big picture. And we are about the big picture. We wrestle with the big picture. And thank you for wrestling with it with me. If you have thoughts about this story, please feel free to share them with me. My email is leemingjay@gmail.com, leemingjay@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to this story. May it hum inside your bones. May you remember it when you most need it. May it be the ticket for you into the circus of whatever spectacle and beautiful feast you are supposed to be at. You can find more stories on my website, which is jayleeming.com, jayleeming.com. And if you're able to support this podcast, please do so. Many thanks to those who have already done so. That's what keeps this going, because it does take some funding to get these stories out into the world. And if I'm lucky, perhaps you will choose to do that. You can do that at my Patreon site, patreon.com/storyjl. May we be lucky. May we remember the coyotes at the edges of the forests and the edges of the cities. May we see the tracks of the deer in the street in the early morning hours there. May we catch the bus we're meant to catch. May we not get what we want and get something larger than we want. That is a beautiful flower. That is a party where the songs flow out of people's mouths, beautiful, and fill the air. May we be lucky. Thank you for listening to this show.